Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, cracks in South Africa's ruling party deepen ahead of this year's general election as former President Jacob Zuma is suspended. But the break from his corruption-ridden past may be just what the ANC is hoping will work in its favour with voters. Also, Italy says it's got big €5.5 billion plans to support Africa's development as leaders from the continent meet in Rome. It's a bid to head off immigration from Africa to Europe. The African Union chairman says, though, that his bloc hopes that these promises, unlike others, manifest into action. And the beginning of the middle of the end. Founding members Burkina Faso and Mali say they've given regional bloc ECOWAS formal notice of their exit. Niger is expected to follow suit. But first, South Africa's ruling party, the ANC, is done with former President Jacob Zuma. It suspended him not long after he backed another party ahead of elections later this year. He did so a couple of months back. Now, Zuma held office from 2009 to 2018, but was forced from office as years of corruption allegations mounted. Eunice Masson has more from Cape Town. Eunice, so Zuma is still facing graft allegations. He was jailed for contempt of court. So why is the ANC doing this now? What's tipped the scales for the party? You'd think that the shine would have gone off of him a while back.
Yes, you would think that. And I think, one has to understand that there's always been two camps in the ANC. It's been the President Cyril Ramaphosa camp and those still backing his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. Now, the political power struggle between these two camps have been ongoing within the ANC structures. However, in December, Zuma made a public announcement that he will not vote for the ANC in this year's general election, and that he will support the newly formed MK party. But he goes even further by encouraging communities not to vote for the ANC. Now, with Zuma being a former president who still holds prominence in the country, the ANC really had no choice but to suspend him. The ANC had to take a stance, a public stance, and they waited to do so after the executive committee met this past weekend. This afternoon, the ruling party officially announced Zuma's suspension, accusing him of bringing the ruling party's integrity into question and trying to kind of dislodge the ANC from power.
Well, if he's such a liability, why has he just been suspended? Why hasn't he been expelled?
Reports quoting ANC insiders suggest that Zuma was not expelled because that would make him subject to a more lengthy disciplinary process. The former president is known for his Stalingrad defense, evading prosecution. In other words, he has avoided trial for 19 years against allegations that he and the French Thales group improperly benefited from the arms deal when Zuma was president. Now, it really comes down to time. South Africa's general election, which might be the most competitive since the country's democracy in 1994, is around the corner. Putting Zuma in the middle of a lengthy disciplinary process might just be what the former president wants and needs to garner support for the ANC's rival MK party.
Well, we've seen that happen elsewhere. Thanks very much, Eunice Essam there for us in Cape Town. In other news, the head of the African Union says that more pledges of development support for the continent must pass from words to deeds. Moussa Faki Mahamat spoke at the summit of African leaders in Rome, where Italy announced a multi-billion-euro investment plan for African growth in the hopes that that will affect immigration numbers to Europe. Catherine Viette tells us more.
Resetting the relationship with Africa. That's what Italy's far-right prime minister hopes to do with her Mattei plan. Giorgia Meloni says her €5.5 billion proposal seeks to position Italy as a key bridge between Africa and Europe, boosting economic ties, creating an energy hub, and curbing immigration.
We've decided to launch an ambitious program of interventions capable of helping the continent, of helping it grow and prosper starting from its immense resources. We've chosen 5 major priorities of intervention: education, training, health, agriculture, water and energy.
Unveiling the proposal at a summit in Rome in the presence of 24 African leaders, Maloney says it's time for Africa to be treated as an equal partner. Under the terms of the plan, Italy says it's ready to make massive long-term investments in exchange for a portion of the continent's energy resources. Maloney also says the deal will help curb illegal immigration by tackling some of the economic issues that cause people to seek a better life elsewhere. The proposal received a cool reception from those present, with the African Union president saying he wished Africa had been consulted beforehand.
Africa is ready to discuss the outlines and modalities of its implementation. Here, I must emphasize the need to combine action with words. You will understand that these promises are not enough for us anymore. Promises that are often never maintained.
Along with African heads of state, top EU and UN officials and representatives from international lending institutions were at the summit. The European Commission president called the Mattei Plan Team Europe at work, saying it complemented the bloc's €150 billion European Global Gateway Initiative for Africa, launched 3 years ago.
Well, founding members Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso say that they're leaving regional bloc ECOWAS with immediate effect. All 3 countries are ruled by military regimes, having undergone coups in recent years, and they signed a mutual defence pact known as the Alliance of Sahel States back in September. Now, tensions with ECOWAS have been mounting over sanctions brought in over the military takeovers in the trio of countries. They've accused the punishment of being inhumane. Our regional correspondent Sam Bradpiece has been speaking about the implications of the alliance's breakup with ECOWAS with a UN specialist on Mali.
First of all, Mr. Ting, thank you very much for being with us. I'd like to ask, were you surprised by this announcement on Sunday?
Non, pas du tout. Il y a eu, depuis qu'on a créé l'Alliance des États du Sahel.
No, not at all. Ever since the creation of the Alliance of Sahel States, I thought we were heading in this direction.
Souvent très fondé
The putschists made justifiable criticism of the sanctions. These are countries facing severe security crises and crises of democracy and governance. The responses of the international community, whether that is France, MINUSMA or ECOWAS, were not fit to deal with this.
Do you think ECOWAS can survive this?
I think ECOWAS could survive. It's not too late to make things right. ECOWAS realizes that all of the measures and the sanctions it enacted were inappropriate. And it's trying to solve this through diplomacy. And it should try to solve this through diplomacy. But we should also recognize that the soldiers who came into power by force don't have the legitimacy to take such serious decisions without consulting the people in one way or another, and without consulting the national assemblies. In reality, we're looking at an alliance of weak countries facing enormous problems. There's also the question of power in Africa. They're reflecting on how, now that they have power, how can they hold on to it? How can they avoid a transition to civilian rule? How can they ignore deadlines? How can they ignore criticism? How can they avoid human rights? That is part of their thinking. The world has been polarized since the war in Ukraine. It's obvious that their decision is proof of this polarization and the strengthened position of Russia in the Sahel. This decision is a massive blow to African unity. African unity begins with regional ties. The fact that ECOWAS, which is the largest regional bloc in Africa, has been hit by this division represents a major geopolitical earthquake in the Sahel today.
Is it possible that other West African countries could follow suit? I'm thinking notably about places like Guinea, which is also under a military regime, which is also being pressed to return to civilian rule.
It's true that Guinea could be tempted. But for me, Guinea isn't the biggest risk. Togo is. Togo has never had a change of political power. Togo has been serving as a link between ECOWAS and the alliance of Sahel states. When they get together for discussions, it's in Togo. Togo is currently revising its constitution, possibly to allow the government to remain in power. For me, it's Togo that is more concerning than the military regime in Guinea. It's true that with everything going on, we don't know the potential consequences on ECOWAS more widely, or for relations between the different countries. But in reality, it looks like the beginning of the collapse of the regional bloc.
Sam Brad-Peace there, speaking to a UN expert on Mali on his take of the alliance of Sahel states' exit from ECOWAS. Well, finally, in eastern Gambia, a yearly festival celebrating the Kankurang, a mythical figure in Mandinka culture, is often seen as a way of preserving their culture and tradition. However, it is in danger of disappearing. Laurent Berstecker tells us more.
His body covered in leaves and tree bark, he marches to the frenzied beats of drums and whistles, threatening those who get too close with a swing of his machete. A mythical character in Mandinka culture, the Kankurang is believed to appear once a year to ward off evil spirits.
The Kankurang is not human. It has this mystical power. It protects the people. It protects evil and ward off evil. So it's so sacred and so respected that women are not even allowed traditionally to be close to it.
Since 2018, the city of Janjanbureh in the Gambia has been hosting a yearly festival dedicated to this mystical figure, a way to uphold cultural traditions that are increasingly threatened by westernization. As the night falls on the town, the ceremony takes a hypnotic turn. Their bodies swinging and shaking, entranced Kankurangs perform a traditional dance, an unsettling yet riveting spectacle that fully captures the audience's attention.
It's amazing, it is unifying, and it's cultural, and this is something that belongs to the Gambia and Senegal, so it's important that we hold this every year.
A West African ethnic group, the Mandinka founded some of the continent's greatest civilizations, including the Malian Empire. Now scattered across Africa, mostly in Senegal and the Gambia, they're fighting to keep their traditions alive.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.